great at it already, so.
Okay, we're now streaming live. All right. So yeah, thank you. We just watched your film. It was fantastic. It was really beautiful.
Thank you.
So thank you for making it.
Thank you for having me.
Sure, yeah. So I guess I'm just gonna ask these questions to you and let you talk to people about it. That's generally what happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to, I mean, just from hearing your music over the years, and then of course the music for this, but generally your music does have like a certain amount of cinematic quality to it, even not just the scores for your films, but I was thinking it's really soulful and an awesome combination of Portishead and the Rachels at times. And I was wondering if you come up with the score before conceptualizing the film, or do you compose the score for the particular idea? How does that usually work?
So this piece was pretty special. I started working on this piece at the Lighthouse Works, which is an artist residency on an island called Fisher's Island, which is in the Long Island Sound. And I was there for 6 weeks as a resident over, I'd say the end of October through the beginning of December last year. And I knew that I wanted to do something that I wanted to create an artwork that had to do with the landscape and a few stories that had been running through my mind. One, I wanted to do something with with Fort H.G. Wright, which is the former naval base that's on the island. It's decommissioned. Some of my poetry work has been based on visiting post-industrial spaces and writing about abandoned ruins and the history of the military-industrial complex. My family is part crazy artists and part people in the Army, and so I've always had my head in both mind spaces. And so I knew that I wanted to work with this landscape, and I've also been working with groups of musicians. I'm a poet. I'm also a musician. I've toured in bands on different instruments in the punk DIY style since I was in high school, and I've been working with musicians and wanted to start, working towards creating a piece that would be conceptualized as a short film and not just a performance piece that also had live video or singing and instruments. I wanted to actually just move into film. And so I started out by visiting the shore every day, and I documenting myself, thinking about a story that's been handed down in my family. According to my family legend, my grandfather's grandfather emigrated from Norway to Manitoba to join the fur trade, and he had 5 wives, all of whom he renamed Elizabeth on their wedding day. And we don't have a record of the women's maiden names, or even really any verification available who they were, where they came from. But this is just a story that's been handed down. And so I was not only thinking about the ways that family legends are passed down through our lineage, but the idea that these absences are also inherited, and that there are certain things that are completely unknowable in our families, and that it is a real source of privilege and power to be able to count back a certain number of degrees. And so I had started by having conversations with friends, asking how far back in their family they could name their lineage and what are the reasons why or why not. And a couple of those friends are collaborators of mine who became part of the ensemble for this piece. And so I was working every day on the rocks at Fort H.G. Wright and on the neighboring beach, which is called Isabella Beach. And I was also thinking about how my mother is an Elizabeth, and her father named her Elizabeth after the 5 Elizabeths that are unknowable, and how she danced when she was younger. And she, when her teacher passed away, she was just very sad and bereft and quit dancing. And my whole life I've been very cerebral and working in different art forms, but I've never explored movement because it had always been this very forbidden thing. And that too is inherited. So I was thinking about how gestures are inherited and absences are inherited. And we do things in our day-to-day life that we don't even realize that our grandparents did. It could be the way that you smile. It could be a visual tick that you have. It could be a way of holding your poise that is handed down in your family unconsciously. Not even to get into epigenetics and how we actually inherit trauma written into our genetic code. So I was thinking about these women and how I would take on the story without doing a proper documentary where I interview family members and travel to Canada, or without writing a narrative film about them. And so I was moving and exploring movement and documenting myself in this image. So at the end of the residency period, I was able to bring my ensemble out to the island, and we spent a couple of days going around a circle and talking about the concepts, and all talking about our family lineage and what we see, how we can visualize or make sounds that evoke certain kinds of absences. And so we did a workshop performance of the score, and then we did a group residency at Malay Colony where we took this long scroll of paper and drew a visual score around the room. And I had an early draft of the film that we used for the workshop performance and for the scoring. And then as the concepts for the music materialized, the edit of the film changed slightly. So there is an Act 1, 2A, 2B, Act 3 structure, particularly to the score. And the images follow a progression of movement archetypes, and they're structured in a certain way. So the music really came from interacting with the film as a visual score, but it also came out of collaboration. It came out of conversations. It came out of spending time in a room together and working together and talking about, what sounds would evoke what feelings. And so we recorded the score in February at Bard, and again, all got together and recorded it in a room.
Awesome. And you got Pat Goobler on there too, huh?
Yeah, I love Pat.
Yeah, that's great.
He's fantastic. I
Yeah.
love his music, his harp playing. He's also a really great keyboardist and guitarist. Yeah.
So how did you, so that's just, the score, and you're talking about the concept, but how were you able to manage all of, writing, conceptualizing, composing, movement, cinematography? There's so much that you're kind of weaving together, and it all, it works very well. How did you manage all of that?
I think a lot of it came from improvisation. So when I start working on a piece like this, I'm not thinking so much about structuring a narrative film where production is 100% management. A lot of it really is following impulse and then tracking those impulses and integrating them. So of course, with editing and producing music, there is a lot of management there. But it's just spending a lot of time with it and spending, every day pulling out a thread and working with color, and a lot of self-reflection too, watching myself move and saying, no, that's not the one, that I'm not holding enough tension, or I'm not moving far enough, and a lot of that it was done at the moment. And so I would spend 8 hours every day walking the island, walking these different shorelines, climbing up on rocks, and it was pretty cold by then. It was 30 degrees. So you can't tell because I'm actually wearing a costume, the blue dress that I have on in the film. I had decided that I wanted to only work with what was available to me at the time. So I actually found that dress in the basement of the church rummage sale on the island. So I found it, and I thought that it was perfect for kind of like a housewife from the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
Cut. So I was wearing, or dressed up, bundled up really, really warmly, and then changing into the dress by myself on the rocks, which is really cold. But looking in my camera, doing, moving and then saying, oh, I have to change the way that I hold myself here, or I have to move differently there. And I'm just focusing on whatever is happening in the moment, and then watching my dailies at night. I would rewatch, and then I would take notes on what was evolving and what was kind of coming out. So I was figuring out the piece as I was creating it, from, I say, October through November, just creating image and looking at image and saying, what is this really? What is this feeling? And then writing the archetypes. So writing the history of the women, kind of cataloging. So what's everything that I've ever known about this story, all the different emotional tones that can be taken from these stories, because the stories change, just like stories that are handed down through your family. Sometimes they're tragic, sometimes they're humorous. The story changes. And so just listening to all those overtones and then trying to think of them in terms of gestures and sounds and group them together. So there is some management there. There's media management, and then notebooks and spending time with the material, editing.
Cool. So this next question, I'm just going to read it because I couldn't memorize it. But so I was just thinking, reading about the concept, it made me think about lineage, like you were saying, but as another attempt by men to transcend mortality, to force their will through time, as they've tried to do through space, land, and culture. Within this narrative, women become passive in the thread of the family, even though their involvement is not only necessary, but instrumental in the bringing of new life and the responsibility of ensuring that it continues beyond childhood. Do you think that men in that time, as well as now, just blindly accepted this power dynamic, or do you think that they understood it and sought to promote and perpetuate it? I'm just thinking about like the story of all of your great grandfather, and I mean that's pretty wild.
I think that men understand that women hold the future because women can have children, and our past is also a territory. And when we think about our past or history, history is constantly being both written and rewritten, and it really is the responsibility of those who are alive to be keepers of history. And that's keepers of lineage, whether we're talking about genealogy, or we're talking about American history or world history or the history of the universe, we're talking about physics. We invent the past as we discover it, or as we write it down and keep it. And so I think that it's such a dangerous question. I think that women are very powerful in that, by our ability to have children and thus give humanity a future. I do think that there's been a long literary and psychological history and scientific history of men being threatened by that. And I think that I just think that women are very powerful, and that we are storytellers, and that the stories that get passed down and the stories that are safe kept, even if they can't be scientifically proven or proven with documents, they are real. And so thinking about, when I'm thinking about my lineage and why I wanted to make this piece, is that I wanted to make a real record of these stories, and not just be someone who passed them down or said them to persons, to join that history, to create a document, first person documentation of claiming my own image, with the understanding that I have inherited my image from my lineage. There's certain ways that I look like my mother, and then I also don't look like her, and yet I've inherited that. There's certain ways that I move like my grandmother, or I cook like my grandmother, and I've inherited that. and that there are things that I don't even know that I do that I'm sure that I have inherited from the five Elizabeths, and to claim those too, and to also document what I don't know, that some of this is inherently unknowable, because I think that claiming that too is powerful. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
No, I mean, just reading about, reading about the work and seeing it, it made me think so much about those things. I just tasked with the idea of coming up with questions for you. I just didn't want it to be I wanted to try and go a little deep.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if it was just like, I'm just, kind of like a dumb guy asking like these questions about women and about, like I have another question that's like that
Well,
to
if
the
you
last
think of a
question.
story,
So,
like, I mean, think about a lot of dystopian, like what about Children of Men or Handmaid's Tale?
mhm.
I think that narratives like those are also just all about, acknowledging that women hold the future, and the power of creation, and that men have sought to control that in various ways throughout history, and that is really powerful.
So for the last question that I had, I find your work, well, the fifth Elizabeth in your description of five of them in the writing that you have on your site about the film, calls back to what I was referring to in the last question as far as history and who writes it, which you also referred to. I find your work to be inspiring, and it makes me feel hopeful that culturally we'll be able to outgrow the misogyny that's informed generations of family stories. How do you visualize the gravity of being a storyteller whose work is ultimately a part of a wave that will break apart the rigidity of the past?
I'm pretty excited about being part of it. I think that, yeah, especially with the rise of Me Too, and the focus that there's been on equity and inclusion in everything. I want to say filmmaking, the arts, every career. Um, it's really important for not just stories to be about women, but to have women be the people that bring those stories to the screen, or produce them, direct them, hold the camera, narrate them, create music about them. And I think I'd say, like, women and non-binary people, I think that there's a lot of there's room to grow, but I think that yeah, like you said, it's a wave, particularly the past few years, that's really inspiring to me, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, is that it? Does anybody have any questions? Everyone wants to digest the film, not food or anything. But yeah. Yeah, do you want to add anything else?
I'm so grateful to have this film as part of the programming with Nova Arts and with MONIF. I'm so grateful, and I'm really excited. I love what you do, and I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're excited to, once we can do more, love to have the live group come in.
Yeah.
And do some accompaniment, or have you here for a weekend or something.
I know we were talking about it earlier, and the group was just so excited to come and perform in the new space.
Yeah.
I want to see your piano, and yeah, once everything kind of settles out and we have a vaccine and it's safe to gather, then yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah. Cool.
Do you have anything coming up?
Oh yeah, you have anything coming up?
What do I have coming up? So the film is going to screen in a few more festivals this winter. So the International Fine Arts Film Festival in Santa Barbara, and at New Faces, New Voices in Brooklyn. And yeah, those have gone online too. But that, c'est la vie. I'm excited to just kind of work on a new. I shot a short with Killian Venman and Amy Klein, who perform in this ensemble. We shot our footage actually just before quarantine started in the spring, and I've been working on a score for it and editing it. And so I'm really drilling down on that. That's my main focus right now. And it's nice, honestly, to spend some time holed up in that universe, because I love doing it, and I can spend 14 hours just being in the edit box and not even realize I haven't eaten. So that's my winter, which I'm looking forward to.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Can't wait to show it to you.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for being part of it and for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Dee.
She says you're welcome.
Have a great night, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. See you later.
See you later.